60 Minutes Rewind.
When Hurricane Sandy made its way towards the East Coast in the fall of 2012, residents knew it could be devastating. What they didn't expect was just how bad Sandy turned out to be. 117 deaths and damage estimated at more than $60 billion, second only to Katrina. Now, 2.5 years later, Sandy victims have been hit by something else they didn't expect: the storm after the storm. Many of them say they've been cheated out of their insurance claims. Thousands of claims have still not been resolved, and there is evidence that many homeowners were victims of what appears to be wide-scale fraud, where original damage reports were later changed to make it look like the damage wasn't as bad. Making matters worse, appeals to the federal agency in charge of all of this, FEMA, went nowhere. Hurricane Sandy damaged or destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes and rearranged neighborhoods. Long Beach, New York was one of them. This was Bob Cable's house the next day, the yellow one, with a sand dune blocking his front door.
The beaches decided that they didn't want to be there anymore, and they came to pay a visit, and that's what happened. And we got back to the house, and we were devastated.
What was that like to walk into your house for the first time?
Everything that you worked so hard in your life to get is now gone.
But you had flood insurance.
Mm-hmm.
You'd paid for every month.
Absolutely.
Did you think you were okay?
Sure. I mean, that's what you pay insurance for.
The city condemned Cable's home, saying it was damaged beyond repair. The house had been knocked off its foundation. His insurance company, Wright Flood, sent an engineer to inspect the damage. 3 weeks later, the Cables couldn't have been more surprised.
I get the engineering report that there's no structural damage to the house. So I'm going like, what do you mean there's no structural damage? The house is not what it was before. So between my wife and myself, we made about 30 to 40 phone calls to different people, the adjuster, the engineering firm, to our flood insurance carrier.
What are you trying to get from them?
Just that this report is wrong. We'd like to get another engineer back.
The insurance company agreed to send someone back out to the house. Surprisingly, it was the same engineer, George Hernemar, who worked for a company called U.S. Forensic.
I said, George, how could you write a report like that? He goes, it's not my report. I said, what do you mean it's not your report? He says, wait here. He goes to the trunk of his car, goes, picks up the report, and brings it into the house. He says, this is the report I wrote.
Bob Cable got out his phone and took a picture of George's original report. It plainly said there was structural damage to the house. But this is the report the insurance company sent to Cable when they denied his claim. Quote, not structurally damaged. They said the damage was long-term, meaning it existed before Hurricane Sandy. The Cable's insurance company, Wright Flood, the largest provider of flood insurance in the country, paid him just $79,000 of his $250,000 policy.
We had a mortgage on the house. I've had estimates of $350,000 to rebuild the house. What am I going to do?
Bob Cable's house was torn down after he sold it for a loss, and he believes it was because of a falsified engineering report. The photo Cable took was solid proof for many other Sandy victims who were struggling with similar situations.
How many houses do you see that are empty?
On this block, probably half of them.
The Cables pleaded to a vice president at their insurance company and passed on their evidence. But the company denied full payment, arguing subsequent reports supported them. With frustration as high as the watermarks in their home, the Cables filed a lawsuit. That suit drew the attention of a Texas trial lawyer who had never been to Long Beach but got on his plane in a hurry. Steve Mostyn has won billions fighting insurance companies, and when he heard about Bob Cable's case, he says he had a gut feeling the Cable family wasn't alone. Sure enough, he says his Houston office is now flooded with paperwork from victims of the superstorm.
There's been a systematic fraud on the policyholders who filed flood claims from Sandy.
What's the fraud?
The fraud is taking engineers' reports and changing them. from saying there was structural damage to saying there's no structural damage, or giving the engineers a form to fill out that already has the conclusion of no structural damage.
Why would anyone do that?
Save money. The biggest ticket item inside a claim for a flood claim is the structural damage, and so when they don't pay for structural damage, they save hundreds of thousands of dollars on each claim.
Of the thousands of cases lawyer Steve Mostyn says he's found, electrician John Miro and his wife Gail's is the most revealing. Their house is in East Rockaway, New York.
What was this street like in the day after Sandy when you came in?
It was like
6 foot high water in the street.
Well, the day after was like Armageddon. It was.
The Miro's house had to be torn down after the storm. Their insurance company paid them just $80,000, and now they're buried in debt after rebuilding their home.
I was like, how can you tell me that this isn't, that you can't cover this, that I'm not going to get the full amount of my insurance? I said, you got my payments every month. I said, now it's time for you to pay, and is what you're going to tell me?
It was 2 years later that the Miros felt a second wave hit them, when the engineer who assessed their home after the storm called them out of the blue.
The engineer sent his report in to the insurance company saying that the house was damaged due to flood. The structural damage is caused by the flood. And from what I understand, the insurance company changed his words without him knowing.
This is Andrew Brom, the engineer who could no longer stay silent.
I wanted to call them from day one. I wanted to tell them that this is not me, I didn't do this.
Brom told us not only were changes made to his engineering reports, but he was asked to cover it up. He showed us the original report he'd written about the damage to John and Gail Miro's house.
We assess in the conclusions hydrodynamic forces, hydrostatic forces due to the flood caused the cracking and shifting throughout the foundation.
So you're saying the flood caused this damage?
Correct. And then in the revised or the altered report, it says settlement due to consolidation of soil caused the foundation wall to crack. That's not what I wrote. It's completely altered.
Brom inspected more than 180 homes after Sandy, working for a company called High Rise Engineering. After he discovered the changes made to the report he wrote about the Miro's home, he went back to check all the copies of his original reports against the final copies that the homeowners received.
How many of those reports were doctored?
At least 175 of them, or approximately 96% is the number that I calculated.
175 of your reports were doctored?
Correct. They were altered.
And the ones that weren't changed?
The ones that weren't changed, interestingly, were ones where I recommended that no repairs are required.
Brom says High Rise Engineering pressured him to sign an affidavit saying he agreed with their final reports. He says he ignored the request and never did it.
Do you think they were trying to cover up something?
Now, knowing what I know, yes.
What do you think was going on?
They figured out that they altered all those reports, and they wanted to hurry up and have, they called me Brom. Get Brom to sign off on this quick. So if Brom wasn't thinking or Brom didn't care, he would just sign his name 200-something times, and they were off the hook. And that wasn't happening with me.
Insurance companies have argued the reason the engineering reports were changed was to allow for a peer review process, a standard practice in the insurance industry.
Peer review, to me, would be amongst my peers of an equal licensing or education level, and review a report and discuss it, but not peer review when I send my final report and it's changed without my knowledge. That's not peer review.
The story will continue after this.
Just days ago, the offices of High Rise Engineering were raided by the New York Attorney General's office, which is conducting a criminal investigation into High Rise as well as the insurance companies that hired them. High Rise, Wright Flood, and U.S. Forensic all declined our requests for an interview. They have denied allegations of criminal activity, and all three say they are cooperating with the investigation. More than 2,000 Sandy victims have filed lawsuits in federal courts.
You know, we thought originally it might be one engineer, right? And then we find multiple engineers inside the same company. And as we dug into it, it's other engineering companies. Well, then you got to start looking for a different common denominator.
And in this case, all of those companies are overseen by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. More than 5 million homeowners living in designated flood zones all around the country are required to buy flood insurance policies backed by FEMA and taxpayer money. Brad Kaiserman is the new head of FEMA's flood program. On the job for about 3 weeks, he's already had to answer to allegations of fraud and criminal activity at the expense of some of Sandy's hardest hit families.
I'm not going to sit here and conceal the fact that it happened, because in the last 3 weeks I've seen evidence of it.
You say you've seen evidence of these fraudulent reports.
Yes.
You've seen evidence of what could be criminal activity by using unlicensed engineers.
Yes, which is why I referred it to the Inspector General.
When did FEMA learn that there may be a problem here, that fraudulent reports may be used to deny claims?
I think that there were signals, based on what I've seen, if you will, signals in late 2013, early 2014, that there were problems that our survivors were experiencing with engineering, with the claims process, with appeals, but those were signals. And then I think those signals got louder, if you will.
It was more than signals. This is a letter to FEMA in the summer of 2013 that clearly says that the person doing the inspections here wasn't a licensed engineer.
Right.
This is to FEMA in the summer of 2013.
So you're right, this is dated August 19th, 2013, and you know, I've seen this.
The document sent to FEMA was an appeal from another family who felt badly cheated by their insurance company. In it, they provide proof that the engineer who inspected their home, working for the firm U.S. Forensic, was not licensed to work in New York.
This upset me very much, because this piece of information, had it been elevated in the agency, would have been very helpful in helping us help people earlier.
Why wasn't it elevated in the agency? I mean, this to me is the type of thing you run to the boss with.
This would be the type of thing that I would run to the boss with, and I need to find out why that didn't happen.
But as far as you know, no one at FEMA ever said to the insurance companies, ever said to the engineering companies, keep the claims down.
As far as I know, no one at FEMA has ever done that.
But lawyers paid for by FEMA have gone after Sandy survivors in court, accusing them of fraud. Bob Cable, who took the photo of his altered engineering report, was accused in court of stealing the report done on his own home, which he denies.
We have homeowners who went through the appeals process, and the attorneys who are being paid for by FEMA called them thieves, said they were trying to conduct fraud. I mean, those are your dogs at the end of the leash. Do you take any responsibility for that?
Yes, I take responsibility for the fact that when FEMA funds activities, the people who are getting paid by those funds need to behave in a professional, ethical manner.
2.5 years after Sandy, neighborhoods still bear the scars of the storm, but settlement talks are now underway. A week ago, FEMA's Brad Kaiserman and a team of attorneys flew to Texas to meet with Steve Mostyn to begin negotiations to settle more than 2,000 Sandy claims.
These people are truck drivers, nurses, firefighters. They said they fought as much as they could, and they feel like FEMA just gutted them. They just gutted them.
The fact that that's the experience they had with their insurance companies, their engineers, their adjusters, in a FEMA-funded program, it's unacceptable.
So we're going to make it right?
I am, as you know, I'm doing everything I can in the midst of negotiations to try to make that right. Let's face it, I don't have unlimited authority. I can't wave a magic wand and make all of this right for everyone.